I always used to think love was something unconditional, especially the kind parents are supposed to have for their children. That belief shattered the day I turned 12, the day my little sister Ava was born. At first, it was subtle, the way my parents doted on her every coo and sneeze. I chalked it up to baby fever. I knew she was adorable. I loved her too. But soon, it wasn't just baby talk or cuddles. It was forgetting to show up at my science fair while buying her a custom onesie with her name embroidered. It was skipping my birthday because Ava had a cold. It was every just this once becoming the new normal. By the time I was 16. It wasn't subtle anymore. My mom, Jennifer, used to be all about appearances. She had this image of us as the perfect suburban family for her Facebook updates. But in real life, I was slowly becoming invisible. Dad Robert, he wasn't cruel, but he was a follower. Wherever Mom's energy went, his followed. So when Mom decided Ava was the golden child, Dad quietly agreed. Ava was 7 years younger than me, but they acted like she was the firstborn, the heir to the family legacy. I became the shadow in the hallway scene only when needed. I worked part-time after school to save for college, kept my grades spotless, and even cooked dinner most nights because Mom said she was too drained from running after Ava. She was enrolled in every class imaginable: ballet, art, piano, all paid for, all celebrated. When I asked if they could co-sign a small student loan for me, Mom didn't even blink. "We're stretched thin, honey," she said. "Ava's recital fees alone are draining us." So the first found a scholarship, and I left. I moved 400 miles away for college. No one helped me pack. No one called after I arrived. It was like they had been waiting for me to leave so they could complete the fantasy of their perfect family: one daughter, one golden child. No reminders of failure, but I didn't fail. What they didn't know, what they never cared to ask, was that I was building something. I double majored in finance and computer science, took on internships no one else wanted, and started coding freelance projects for startups late into the night. By the time I was 24, I had launched my own fintech company with two friends. At 26, we sold our first product to a mid-sized bank for a seven-figure deal. I poured my portion into the next idea in an AI-powered personal finance tracker. We called it Clear Nest. It blew up during the pandemic, when everyone suddenly cared where their money was going. Within 2 years, it had over 2 million users. I was 29, CEO, and sitting on more money than I ever thought I'd see in my lifetime. And still, no call, no email, no, "we're proud of you." Just silence. Until the silence broke. One rainy afternoon, I got a message from my dad on Facebook. That alone stunned me. He never reached out. "Hey kiddo, long time. We were wondering if you could help us with something." That something turned out to be retirement they hadn't saved at all. Apparently, they were planning on me doing well and giving back to the family. Their words, not mine. I stared at the message for a long time, my tea going cold beside me. They didn't want me back. They wanted a bank account. They wanted usefulness. I didn't respond. 2 days later, Mom emailed me directly. "Ava is so stressed about us lately. She's taking on extra hours at her dance studio. It would mean the world to her if her big sister could step in and help ease the burden." That was the moment something in me snapped out. Big sister. Now they remembered I existed, not as a daughter, not as a person, as a wallet. I could hear her voice in that email, the same way she used to dismiss me when I asked for help with anything as a teen. "We all have to make sacrifices, honey." Funny how those sacrifices were always mine. So I decided if they wanted something from me, they were going to get exactly what they gave me. Nothing. But I wasn't just going to ignore them. I was going to make them feel it. First, I asked for a Zoom call. My mom's face was a careful mask makeup just right, lips pulled into a tight smile. "Sweetheart," she said, "it's been too long." Dad waved from the background. "I heard you're doing very well," she added, her tone making it sound like a question. I smiled. "I am. How are things with Eva?" That's when her face softened like a marshmallow melting. "Oh, she's incredible. She just got asked to teach an advanced class." "She's so gifted. And financially?" I asked. "You mentioned needing help." She leaned forward. "Well, your father's pension didn't come through the way we hoped, and with Ava working so hard, we thought maybe you could help cover the mortgage. Just for a few years, until things stabilize." I nodded thoughtfully. "You want me to help? For Ava's sake?" Mom blinked. "Well, yes. She's under a lot of pressure." I let the silence stretch. Then I leaned in and said, calm and cold, "You replaced me with Ava a long time ago. You forgot I existed. Now I'm simply returning the favor." Her mouth opened. No sound. Click. I ended the call, but that was just the opening move. The revenge wasn't just about saying no. It was about making them understand the cost of their choices. I wanted them to taste every ounce of regret they deserved. I hired a private financial investigator not to dig into their assets, because I already knew they had none, but to confirm something else. They had cashed out Ava's college fund when she was 15 to pay for a new SUV. They had also refinanced the house twice to fund vacations and upgrades, most recently a trip to Maui for family bonding, without me, of course. And now they were months away from foreclosure. So I bought the house through a shell LLC, of course, quietly, cleanly. Their mortgage company was happy to hand it over at a discount. 3 weeks later, they received an official notice. This property is now under new management. Tenants have 60 days to vacate unless a rental agreement is signed under the new ownership. I got a text from Mom that night. "You bought our home?" I didn't reply. 2 days later, Ava called me. She never had before. Voice was panicked, on the edge of tears. "Please," she said. "They're freaking out. They think you're trying to destroy them." I didn't say anything. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. I breathed in, slow, measured, "Because you all did it to me first." I hung up. And for the first time in years, I slept like a baby, but the game wasn't over yet. No. That was just part one. They still had no idea what I was really planning. And believe me. They were going to wish. They'd never forgotten my name. The morning after Ava called, my phone didn't ring. No texts. No emails. Silence. And that silence, it was the sweetest music I'd heard in years. Because I knew what it meant. They were scrambling. My parents had finally realized they no longer held any power over me. That the daughter they replaced had become the one holding the keys to their future. But I wasn't done. Not even close. You see, revenge isn't just about retaliation. It's about making them feel everything they made you feel, slowly, thoroughly, inescapably. That's what they had earned. I didn't kick them out right away. No. I wanted them to ask. Beg. Even. And they did. 3 days later, Mom sent a carefully worded message. This time, not laced with guilt or condescension, just uncertainty. "We're trying to understand your intentions. We've lived in this house for 30 years. We raised our family here." Family. The word hit like a spark in dry grass. That house hadn't been my family home in over a decade. Not once did they ask me to come back for holidays. I was erased like a typo in a text they regretted ever sending. I wrote back one line. "You have 45 days left. Let me know if you'd like to discuss a rental agreement, market rate." Within 20 minutes, my dad called. He didn't sound angry. He sounded tired. "I don't understand," he said softly. "Why are you doing this? This isn't you." And for the first time, I didn't flinch at his voice. I didn't search it for warmth or approval. I didn't try to be good. I let his confusion settle between us like smoke in a room too small to breathe in. You never asked who I became, I said. You assumed I stayed the girl you ignored, but I didn't. I became someone who remembers. There was a pause. Then the last thing I expected to hear were sorry. A younger version of me would have wept at that, would have cracked, folded, rushed home. But now, I didn't even blink. You're not sorry, I said. You're scared. That's different. And I hung up again because I wasn't doing this for an apology. I was doing this for closure. I gave them one more chance, just one. I offered them a rental agreement, not for the whole house, just for the top floor, the bottom unit. I was turning it into a local nonprofit branch office, a financial literacy center for underprivileged students. I could almost hear Mom's teeth grinding when she read the lease. I had it drafted with strict legal language. Any violation, any missed payment, and they were out. The rent wasn't outrageous, but it wasn't mercy either. Market rate, just like I said. They signed it, swallowed their pride like spoiled milk. Moved into what used to be my childhood bedroom, but poetic justice wasn't enough. I needed them to see who they had thrown away. So I came home, for the first time in 10 years, parked my matte black Tesla across the street, wore a blazer that cost more than their monthly rent, and knocked on the front door of the house I technically owned. Ava opened it. She looked tired. She was still pretty graceful in that way dancers always are, but her eyes were red. Her posture slumped, and there were deep lines around her mouth that hadn't been there before. She'd been the golden child for so long, but now she looked like she'd finally realized the pedestal was hollow. Sophie, she said, I wasn't sure you'd really come. Neither were Mom and Dad, I replied. Are they here? She nodded. Upstairs. I walked in like I belonged because I did. They were tenants. I was the owner. When I stepped into the living room, both of them were sitting on the couch. Mom was pale. Dad stood up too fast and knocked over a mug. I didn't smile. I didn't offer hugs. Sat down across from them and folded my hands. Want to make something clear, I said. I'm not here to repair a family. I'm here to remind you of the cost of replacing people. My mom opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. No, you don't get to speak first. You always spoke first. You always spoke over me, not today. She lowered her eyes. Everything you gave Ava, I don't begrudge her. She was a child. But the way you made me feel like a burden, like a backup plan, that didn't vanish. It built me, and it made me successful. So thank you. But don't think I forgot. Dad cleared his throat. We thought you didn't want to be part of the family. I laughed, short and sharp. You made sure of that. You told yourselves that so you didn't have to feel guilty. The room was still, dead quiet. Then Ava gently spoke. Do you hate me too? I looked at her for a long moment. No, I said. I don't hate you, but I stopped loving the idea of you. The one who got everything while I got nothing. I hope you find your way, but you're not my responsibility. She swallowed and nodded. And for the first time, I think she actually understood. I stood up. Your rent is due on the 5th. Late fees apply after 3 days. I trust you won't need reminders. Mom looked like she might cry. Dad looked older than I remembered. Ava just looked hollowed out. Good. They needed to sit with this. They needed to feel the discomfort of knowing that their decisions had permanence. That night, I drove back to my penthouse and opened a bottle of wine. As the city lights blinked below me, I felt the weight of years sliding off my chest, not all at once, but piece by piece. Then something unexpected happened. I got a letter in the mail, not an email. Not a text, a letter. From Ava. Inside was a handwritten note. No flourishes, no manipulation. I didn't understand what they did to you until I felt it myself. They put me on a pedestal, then build expectations I couldn't carry. I thought I was lucky, but I was used to. I'm sorry. Not because I want something, but because I finally see it. There was a check inside for $1,000. I know it's nothing to you, but I wanted you to know I'm not going to live off what they gave me anymore. I'm building my own life now. I sat there staring at that letter for a long time, not because I forgave her, but because maybe she wasn't the villain I made her out to be. Maybe she had just been another tool in their game, but I wasn't ready to trust her, not yet, because the past still lingered, and my revenge, it wasn't over. There was one final move I hadn't played yet, and when it landed, they'd know what it truly meant to be replaced. It's funny what silence feels like after years of chaos. The kind of silence where no one is demanding things from you. No one's calling to guilt trip you. No one's pretending they care just long enough to get something out of you. I had spent years chasing that peace, and now that I had it, I wanted more, not more peace, more closure. Ava's letter had cracked something open in me. Not wide enough to let her in, but just enough to let some light in. Her apology felt genuine. Her check, while unnecessary, carried weight. It meant she was finally willing to own her part, even if she hadn't been the architect of my pain. Still, my parents hadn't learned anything. They were quiet, yes, obedient even. Paying rent on time, responding to management emails from my LLC like strangers rather than blood. But it wasn't remorse. It was fear, and I wasn't interested in ruling through fear. I wanted them to feel shame, reflection, regret. So I pulled the last lever. Months earlier, I had started a program at my nonprofit branch, Foundations Rebuilt, a mentorship and scholarship fund for first-generation college students, especially those abandoned by their families. The waiting list was enormous, and every story I read mirrored some version of mine. Overlooked, unsupported, cast aside. Their resilience moved me in ways I hadn't anticipated. Then, I got an idea, an invitation, one that looked completely innocent on the surface, but would be unforgettable. I organized a community event, Daughters of Resilience, hosted at the newly renovated lower floor of my parents' house. It was where we taught financial literacy, career planning, and self-advocacy workshops. To young women who had been told by their families that they weren't enough. This time, I made the event public. Local press, alumni, donors, sponsors. And yes, family guests. I sent one to Ava, a real one, with her name in gold. And another, less official one to my parents. Open house and keynote. Attendance encouraged. I didn't think they'd come, but they did. Saturday, I stood at the front of a room full of young women ages 17 to 24 each, carrying stories that could break your heart. Behind them, pressed to the back wall near the refreshments, stood my parents, watching me. Ghosts in their own home. I wore a simple black blazer, no logo, no designer label. I didn't want to distract from the message. I took a breath and stepped to the mic. My name is Sophie. I used to be invisible in this house. I lived in the upstairs bedroom with the peeling posters and creaky floorboards. I ate at that kitchen table right there, sometimes alone, while my family celebrated someone else. I was told I was too much or not enough. Sometimes both. I looked up, meeting my mother's eyes for the first time. She's not a villain, I said, just a woman who made choices that I now have to live with. My mom's lips parted slightly. Her eyes shimmered, but I didn't stop. I was told I was ungrateful when I asked for help. I was told I was selfish for wanting more, so I left. And I built the thing I couldn't find here, a place where women like me, like us, could rewrite what family means. Applause filled the room. My parents didn't clap. They didn't need to, because I saw it finally. The crack, the unraveling. My mother's shoulders dropped, and for once, she looked small. not just in stature, but in spirit. After the speech, Ava came up to me. She looked stunned, but proud. That was. She swallowed. Powerful. I nodded. Thanks for coming. She hesitated. I wanted to say something. Not here. Can we talk? We stepped outside, around the side of the house. The same path. I used to sneak down when I needed to be alone as a teenager. I meant it, she said. The letter, the check, all of it. I nodded again. I know. I'm not asking to be part of your life again, she said. I don't want to keep pretending I didn't benefit from what they did to you. I stared at her. This version of Ava wasn't the smug little sister in dance costumes getting praise for twirling. This Ava was a woman carrying guilt and maybe, finally, self-awareness. I don't hate you, I said, but I'm still healing. So I gestured between us. It'll have to be slow. I can live with slow, she said, smiling softly. Slow is better than gone. And for once I smiled too. But as for my parents, they didn't say a word. They left the event early, slipped out like shadows. I found a note in the mailbox the next morning. We didn't know. We didn't understand. We failed you. We see that now. It wasn't signed with Love Dot. It wasn't even signed Mom or Dad. Just Jennifer and Robert. That felt right. They weren't my parents anymore. Not in the emotional sense. Not in the sacred sense. They were tenants in a house that no longer belonged to them. Watching their legacy shrink into a cautionary tale. And I wasn't just their daughter. Was the storm they ignored until it swallowed them whole. Months passed. Then one day, an email arrived from a law firm. My parents had decided to move into a smaller apartment in another city. They'd sold off most of their furniture. They weren't asking for help this time. They were just informing me. I replied with a single sentence. Please leave the keys in the mailbox. The security system will reset at midnight. And just like that, they were gone. No hugs. No reconciliations, just 2 empty rooms and a house finally free. Of ghosts, I walked through it that night, alone. Each creak in the floorboard felt like a buried memory, breathing its last sigh. I ended up in my old bedroom, now stripped to white walls and an old mirror. I stared at my reflection. Not the girl they forgot, not the backup plan, not the bitter. Shadow. Just Sophie. A woman who turned pain into purpose. Loss into legacy. Abandonment. Into ownership. And when I walked out the front door for the last time, locking it behind me, I didn't look back because I wasn't carrying their story anymore. I was writing my own. I didn't expect to feel anything when they left. No relief, no victory lap, not even anger. Just silence again, but a different kind. The silence didn't echo with old screams or unanswered pleas. It was the kind that followed closure. The kind that felt clean. The house was mine again, completely. Every floor, every room, every lock. And yet, I didn't stay. I sold it. Not because I needed the money. I didn't. Not because I couldn't stomach being there. I could. But because I wanted to let it go fully. Because no matter how many times I remodeled or scrubbed it down, those walls remembered everything. I wanted the next girl who walked through that front door to start fresh. Not inherit shadows. Ava. Help me pack. She showed up early, unasked, sleeves rolled, a box of bagels in her hands. I brought carbs and emotional labor. She joked. For a moment, we both laughed. It felt natural. Which startled me. The girl who used to sit smugly across from me while my parents praised her was gone. This woman, my sister, not my rival, was learning how to exist in my world without needing to take from it. As we packed photo albums and boxed up the old piano no one had played in years. She asked, do you ever regret cutting them off the way you did? I stopped folding and looked at her. Double quotes. No, but I regret that I had to. She nodded. That's fair. We didn't talk about them after that, not for the rest of the day. And when we handed over the keys to the realtor, she didn't cry. I didn't either. The house wasn't sacred anymore. It was just property and address. Nothing more. In the months that followed, my nonprofit exploded. The press from the event made its rounds, especially the part about me owning the house where I'd been emotionally abandoned and turning it into a center for young women like me. That story hit hard. We were flooded with applications, grants, volunteers, and letters from people who carried the same wounds in silence for years. That's when I realized my revenge had evolved into something bigger than revenge. It had become rebirth. I started giving keynote speeches at women's shelters, at business conferences, even at a few high schools. Each time I told my story, not the polished boardroom version, the real one, the one about being invisible, about being traded in for a shinier model, about clawing your way back without anyone cheering. I didn't do it for applause. I did it so the next girl wouldn't feel so alone. And then one day, something unexpected happened. Ava called me in the middle of the workday, something she never did. I need to tell you something, she said, her voice shaking. Okay, I said, immediately concerned. What is it? It's about Mom. I sat up straighter. She has breast cancer. The words hit like cold water. She found out a few weeks ago, Ava continued. Didn't tell me at first. Said she didn't want pity, but now it's progressed. Stage 3. She's starting chemo next month. I didn't say anything because I didn't know what to say. I had imagined 1,000 scenarios over the years. Them losing their house, them begging me for help, them hearing my name on the news and choking on their regret. But this, I hadn't prepared for this. She doesn't want anything from you, Ava added quickly. She said not to tell you, but I felt like you should know. I whispered, thank you. Then I hung up. I sat at my desk for a long time, let the silence fill me again. But this time, it didn't feel clean. The next morning, I drove, not out of guilt, not out of duty. I just needed to see for myself. They had moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, functional, real. When I knocked, it took her a full minute to answer. When the door opened, I didn't recognize her at first. Her hair had already started thinning. Her skin was pale. Her eyes, those sharp, judgmental eyes that used to scan me for flaws, were just tired now. She stared at me for a long second, then said, quietly, you look healthy. I nodded. You look like you're fighting. She didn't invite me in. I didn't ask. We just stood there in the doorway. 2 women who had hurt each other, looking for something to hold on to that wasn't blame. I don't expect forgiveness. She said, I wouldn't even know what to do with it. I'm not here for that, I said. Why are you here then? I swallowed. Because I didn't want to regret not showing up. She blinked fast. Her chin trembled. Then she stepped aside. Do you want tea? I said yes, and that was how I ended up sitting at a small round table in a 2-bedroom apartment drinking lukewarm chamomile tea with the woman who had once forgotten me entirely. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't cry. We just sat, and I let that be enough for now. The tea was bitter, or maybe that was just memory. We sat in silence for a long time, not the sharp kind. Not the kind where words hover like knives waiting to be thrown. This was quieter. Sadder. Mom didn't try to apologize again. She didn't even ask how I was doing. It was almost as if the performance had finally ended, and what was left was just 2 women sitting across from each other with nothing left to prove. She fiddled with the sleeve of her sweater. Her nails were short and bare, no fresh manicures, no rings, no fake glamour. She looked human, flawed, mortal. I don't expect you to come back, she said. I just didn't want to leave this world pretending I didn't know what I did. I looked at her, really looked. You do know now, don't you? She nodded slowly. I knew back then, too. I just didn't want to deal with what it said about me. That hit because it was honest out, not just regretful, but real. I think you were afraid of me, I said, because I wanted more. And you were used to being the one who deserved it. She winced, but didn't deny it. I was proud, she whispered. Too proud to admit you outgrew me. For a second, I didn't feel like the wounded child anymore. I felt like the adult in the room. And for the first time, I pitied her. But pity isn't the same as forgiveness, so I stood up. I hope the treatment helps, and I hope Ava's there for you. But I can't be, not yet, maybe not ever. She nodded again, then said the last thing I ever expected to hear from her. I'm glad you got out. That time, I had to look away because it sounded like love. Not enough to heal me, but enough to haunt me. I didn't see my mom again for 3 months, but I zoned out my father, the quiet one, the observer, the man who never raised his voice, never insulted me, never told me directly that I wasn't enough, but also never stopped it, never intervened, never protected me, and in some ways, that was worse, it was easier to hate the sword than the sheath that held it silently. I ran into him at a business conference, of all places. He was standing at the coffee table, flipping through brochures like he belonged there. His hair had gone, completely gray. His shoulders slouched like gravity had finally caught up with him. He looked up and froze. Sophie? I didn't smile. Robert, I said. His face twitched. You don't call me Dad anymore? I took a slow sip of coffee. You don't act like one anymore. He nodded like he had been expecting that. Then he glanced around the room. You really built something, huh? I heard your name during the keynote. And you still showed up, I said, cocking my head. Brave. I'm not here for you, he said too quickly. I smiled thinly. That makes 2 of us. He opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to defend himself, but I didn't care. I stepped closer. You let her tear me down. You saw it, every time, and you said nothing. I didn't want to choose sides, he murmured. You did. I said, voice low but fierce. You just didn't have the spine to admit it. His eyes dropped. Do you think you did your best? I asked. He looked at me then, really looked. No, he said. I think I did what was easy. And there. It was the truth I had waited a lifetime to hear. Then you can live with the result. I said and I walked away. I didn't turn around, didn't wait for a parting word. I didn't need it, because that was the real final act. The truth was, I didn't hate my parents anymore, but I didn't need them either, and that after a lifetime of begging for scraps of love was my victory. A week later, I got a call from Ava. Mom's hair is falling out, but she's handling it better than we thought. I said, that's good. Then she paused. Dad cried in the hallway yesterday. First time I've ever seen him do that. I stayed quiet. Sophie, she asked gently, do you ever think we'll all be okay again? I exhaled. I don't think we'll ever be what we were, but maybe we'll be something new. She didn't ask for more, and I didn't give it, because healing is slow, but distance gave me clarity. It showed me that what they broke in me, I rebuilt myself. Stronger, sharper, wiser, not out of spite, but out of necessity. And now? I was done surviving, It was time to start living. Asterisk, a year passed. The house was gone. Sold to a young couple starting their first chapter. My nonprofit had expanded into 4 cities. With over 300 mentees and a growing alumni network, I sat on panels next to women who had once been statistics, now founders, scholars, change makers. And yet, even with everything I had gained, the ache still visited me sometimes. At night, in quiet moments. like a ghost that didn't want to be EXORCICD dot because revenge doesn't erase pain dot, it just gives it direction dot, it doesn't return. What was lost dot, it gives you something else to carry. But that weight, it's lighter now dot, it changed after I got. The letter dot, it arrived in a plain white envelope with no return address, postmarked from another state. Inside, a single piece of stationery, handwritten. I know you're not waiting for my voice, but I need to say this. I never knew what it meant to be your mother until I watched Ava become one. I see now that love isn't given to the easiest. Child, it's earned by how you show up, especially for the one who's hardest to understand. I failed that test. But Ava said you smiled at her again. She said there's a chance. And that's all I could hope for. Whatever time I have left, I hope it's enough to become better, even if you never see it. It wasn't signed Mom dot, just Jennifer. I folded the letter carefully, slipped it back into the envelope, and placed it in my nightstand drawer knot. Out of sentiment but acknowledgement, the pain was still there, but now it was mine dot, not theirs. A few months later, Ava had her first baby dot. She invited me to the hospital. I want you to meet her, she said, before anyone else. When I walked in, she was holding a tiny pink bundle in her arms. Her eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, but soft with awe. She looked up and smiled. We named her Sophie. I froze out all the words I thought I prepared disappeared. After the strongest woman I've ever known, Ava added, the one who taught me what not to be and what to become. I sat down beside her and took the baby in my arms. Her skin was soft as breath. Her fingers wrapped around mine like they knew something I didn't yet. She blinked slowly, peacefully against my chest, and I felt it. That full circle. Not forgiveness, but freedom. I didn't invite my parents to the baby shower. I didn't send pictures. They weren't owed that. But when Ava eventually visited them with baby Sophie, she told me later that our mom cried for almost an hour. She held her so tightly, Ava said. But it wasn't the same kind of holding. It wasn't ownership. It was reverence. And I knew then, maybe for the first time, that they had finally seen it. What I was, what I became, what they lost. Not a daughter, a legacy. I stood in front of my mirror one morning older, stronger, sharper, and whispered the words I had waited my whole life to say. They replaced me, and one rebuilt myself. Not in their image, but in spite of it dot, and now I don't need them to remember me, because the world will. Time has a strange way of softening sharp edges dot. It doesn't erase them, no. It doesn't make the cuts hurt less. But it makes you remember who you became because of them, not despite them dot. It's been 3 years since they moved out of that. House dot 2 since I last saw my father dot 1 since my mother's final letter, and 6 months since Ava's daughter Sophie took her first steps. She waddled toward me on an early spring morning in Ava's backyard, chubby fingers outstretched. No fear, just joy, as if the world had never taught her caution yet, as if she didn't know that people could leave, could disappear, could turn their backs, and that's when it hit me. Maybe she never had to learn that lesson dot because I did, because I took it all dot, the loss dot, the silence, the injustice, and I didn't just survive it. I transformed it dot into a blueprint, a warning, a legacy. I didn't attend my father's funeral. He died quietly, a heart attack in his sleep. Ava called to tell me, I'll handle the arrangements, she said gently. You don't have to come. I know what he meant to you, and what he didn't. And she was right. I didn't hate him at the end, but I didn't owe him my presence. Either dot, he chose comfort over courage, silence over protection dot, and for that, he got the version of me he deserved, absent, but I sent a wreath. Black orchids and dark, blue HYDRAS dot, the note read, to the man who watched, from the woman who rose. A few weeks later, I visited my mother in hospice dot. She had less than a month left. Her skin was paper thin, her voice a whisper carried by machines. I didn't come with a speech. I didn't come for closure. I came because I had nothing left to prove. She opened her eyes when I entered. You came, she rasped. I did. Her hand trembled as it reached out. I didn't take it right away. I waited, watched Dot, and then, slowly, I placed mine over hers. She studied me like she was trying to memorize the face of the woman she never really got to raise. I didn't know how to love you, she said. I know, I replied. And I learned how to love myself instead. A tear slipped down her cheek. You were the strong one, she whispered, and with that, she closed her eyes again. Not to die, just to rest, and I let her. I walked out of that hospice room with dry eyes and a steady heartbeat because I didn't go to forgive. I went to witness Dot to see what time, regret, and silence had done to the people who tried to break me. And I saw how the house I rebuilt inside myself was stronger than anything they ever tore down. I stood once more on a stage a year later. Another gala, another fundraising event, another room filled with girls whose families had failed them. And this time I told the ending. My mother died with my name on her lips. My father died quietly as he lived distant, but my niece, my namesake, she runs to me with joy, not fear, because I chose not to pass it down. The silence, the cold, the legacy of being unwanted. The room was breathless. I looked at the girls. Some of them were holding back tears. Others sat straighter, chins lifted. I was replaced, I said. And I rebuilt, not to punish them, but to free me. And then I said the line that had become my truth. They gave me nothing. I gave myself everything. Outside the venue, that night, Ava waited for me with little Sophie asleep in her arms. She keeps calling you Mama Soph now, she whispered, smiling. I keep correcting her, but she doesn't care. I laughed softly. Let her call me what she wants. She handed her over, and I held her against my chest. She smelled like lavender shampoo and warm milk. Innocence and renewal. And right. Then I realized revenge was never about them. It was about me, reclaiming my name. My power. My story. And finally, my peace.